skeletons and shivers down your spine. Shrieking skulls will shock your soul, seal your doom tonight. Spooky, scary skeletons and shivers down your spine. Shrieking skulls will shock your soul, seal your doom tonight. Spooky, scary skeletons speak with such a screech. You'll shake and shudder in surprise when you hear these zombies shriek. Spooky, scary skeletons speak with such a screech. You'll shake and shudder in surprise when you hear these zombies shriek.
Hey everybody, what's going on? Hexlex here with another Master Duel video for you. So this one is one that I've been thinking about for a little while now. Honestly, ever since I crafted Grass, I actually got a suggestion to play this deck, and I'd already been thinking about it. This deck, of course, being a good old Skull Servant. So I'm enough of a Yu-Gi Boomer to remember when King of the Skull Servants first got printed back in the Lost Millennium. And I was like, ooh. I was like, wait a second, I remember this random normal monster from Legend of Blue Eyes. Like, there's a card that can get up to 6,000 attack with it. That's awesome. Or 5,000, I guess, because we only had King and regular Skull Servant at the time. And then they started rolling out with a few more, like Lady In Wight, and then Wightmare, and then by the time I stopped playing, that was all that was out. And it's like, yeah, that's almost enough to make a Skull Servant deck, but not quite, in my opinion. In the meantime, I think actually Wightprince did come out while I was still playing, but Wightbaking and Wightprince are like really what carry this deck super hard, because you know the Wightbaking is a search that also you get to search 2 and then discard 1. The one you'll want to search and then discard is often going to be Wightprince, which gets you more mills when it's sent to the graveyard, and then a King of the Skull Servants from the deck with its in graveyard effect. So. This variant here, as soon as the zombie structure got announced, because like really it was the playset of Uni-Zombie that was like keeping me from building this deck sooner. But then when this structure deck got announced and Uni-Zombie was announced to be in it, I was like, oh yeah, it's over. I'm just playing Skull Servants. I have to play this deck. There's no way I can't. It's funny, I'm not like super huge into meme decks, but this one didn't require any ultras that I didn't already have, and also, well, except for of course Uni-Zombie, which I got in the structure deck there. And on top of that, it's I mean, come on, it's Skull Servant. It's spooky, scary skeletons. How can you not? Right? How can you not? Real quick before I get into the deck profile and talk about how the deck works, just want to mention that I did launch my Patreon very recently. You'll find a link to that in the description below. If you want some more daily Master Duel content beyond what comes out on here on YouTube, I also put out daily Master Duel content on the Patreon as well. There you're going to see previews for upcoming content, exclusive gameplay, exclusive games that are only on the Patreon, some Q&As, and we got some other perks now and some more planned in the future. It's just $5 a month, so it's just the price of one pack, and it's definitely more value than a bunch of filler cards. So as far as Skull Servants and how this deck works, this is a very interesting deck to build actually, because I knew this had to be a grass deck. Just given the sheer number of Skull Servant monsters you want to play and how many of them you want to get in the graveyard, I knew this had to be a grass deck. The other cool thing is that Wightprince in particular is not once per turn either of the effects, so we definitely want to be milling as many copies of this card as possible. The search effect of Wightbaking is once per turn, so this one is unfortunately once per turn, but Wightprince sending Skull Servant and Lady In Wight, as well as summoning King of the Skull Servants, neither of those effects are once per turn, which is pretty powerful. The thing to be mindful of when you're banishing Wightprince to summon a King of the Skull Servants from your deck is that you're going to get rid of 3 Skull Servant names in your graveyard when you do that, both the Wightprince and the Skull Servant, the Skull Servants that you end up banishing. One way to kind of help with this, to help circumvent this, is the Wightmare. Not only to put a monster back, but also you could just discard this and then bring back a Lady In Wight that you banished. This will give your King of the Skull Servants protection against destruction in battle, and more importantly, they're unaffected by spell or trap cards. They are still going to be affected by monster effects, so you do have to watch that, but the Lady In Wight being summoned off of the Wightmare can offer some potential protection there. But, you know, I was thinking about this deck's win con. I'm like, how is this deck actually trying to win? We're trying to win by attacking with, you know, one, if not more, giant King of the Skull Servants, right? So I think, even though this is a grass deck, as weird as this might sound, I think this is actually a going second deck. So I kind of built it with that in mind. As you can see, we've got a small Kaiju package here, just a few of them. You know, it's nice to be able to, if your opponent doesn't have any attack mode monsters, just be able to put one on their board. it's not easy to necessarily win with one attack with King of the Skull Servants. Like, against a Kaiju like Gamaciel, that would require the King to have 11,000 attack points, so 8 Skull Servants in Graveyard, which is like, you know, if you mill a Wightprince, that's 1, and then 2 more, that's 3. If you mill a Wightbaking, that's a total of 4. So, like, yeah, it's not, like, impossible, but it's not very easy. I'll definitely say that much. It's not easy at all, honestly. This deck actually went through quite a few different variants, so when we play the games here, you might see some cards that aren't in this current iteration, like White Princess, I think. Let me just search up Skull Servant here. Yeah, there is one Skull Servant card we're not playing, and that's White Princess. I originally started with, 3 of all the Skull Servant cards just to have them. White Princess I quickly found to be, like, the worst one. Well, honestly, Lady In Wight would be the worst one if it wasn't able to be milled off of White Prince. That's the only reason we're playing 3 copies of this card. White Princess is honestly the worst one because she's level 3, and Lady In Wight is not that great for a similar reason. Also, Lady In Wight doesn't have that great effect. White Princess does have a pretty decent effect to mill, specifically White Prince, but being level 1 actually does matter here in this deck. Honestly, like, I don't know. I started with 3 copies of this, and then I trimmed it down. It's also not dark, which can matter for Allure sometimes. I started with 3 copies. I trimmed it down to 1 after a little while, and then I also just ended up cutting it out of the deck altogether. I don't think this card is particularly needed. You don't need Skull Servant names so badly that you need to play 3 copies, or in my opinion, any copies of this card. You could probably get away with it as a one-of, but like even then, I'd probably rather play Gozuki, honestly, before this card, because this card can only mill a White Prince, but Gozuki can mill any zombie, which is definitely a much better effect in my opinion. Funnily enough, even though I waited for Uni-Zombie to build this deck, I actually didn't get to use it a single time. Like, I even put these Synchros in the extra deck in the mind that, like, I might be able to pull them with Uni-Zombie. I also just realized right before I sat down to record this that I forgot to put Fairy Tail Snow in this deck, which should definitely be in just about every 60-card deck, but in any case, we did, like I said, make this with a more going second mind frame. Again, because we're trying to attack with King of the Skull Servants. It's like our win con, right? So, yeah, I got the Kaijus, like I said. I got Droll and Lockbirds. I originally had 2 Nibirus. I only have 1 now. 2 Lightning Storm, playset of Droplets. This deck wants to mill with grass, I think, more than any other grass deck we've played. Like, grass is pretty important to this deck's game plan, so that's why we're playing 3 Allure and 3 Left Arm Offering in order to get to grass as quickly as possible and make sure that we mill it. Because if we can even just mill 1 Wightbaking, then we're in business. We're set to go at that point. But obviously we'd like to mill a whole bunch of Skull Servant monsters. I don't really know what else there is to say about the deck at this point, other than, like, we're just trying to beat them down with big, spooky, scary skeletons. So, yeah, I think I'm just going to go ahead and start breaking down the list card by card here, and then we'll take a look at some Duelist Cup gameplay in which we shut down some decks with the king himself. So, we are playing, of course, 3 Skull Servants and 3 King of these Skull Servants. We're playing 1 Effect Veiler, 3 Wightmare, 2 Droll and Lockbird, 3 White Prince, 3 Wightbaking, 3 Maxx, 3 Lady In Wight, 3 Uni-Zombie, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 3 Mezuki, 1 Kumongous, the Sticky String Kaiju, 1 Lava Golem, 1 Gamaciel, the Sea Turtle Kaiju, 1 Nibiru, the Primal Being, 1 Harpie's Feather Duster, 1 Foolish Burial, 3 Left Arm Offering, 3 Allure of Darkness, 1 1-for-1, 3 That Grass Looks Greener, 2 Lightning Storm, 2 Call by the Grave, 1 Cross-Out Designator, 3 Infinite Impermanence, and then 3 Infinite Permanence and 3 Forbidden Droplet. The extra deck is going to be 1 Shooting Riser Dragon, 1 Borreload Savage Dragon, 1 Chaos Ruler, the Chaotic Magical Dragon, 1 Baronne de Fleur, 1 Lyrilusc Assembled Nightingale, 1 Downerd Magician, 1 Divine Arsenal AA-ZEUS Sky Thunder, 1 Linkruiboh, 1 Relinquished Anima, 1 Knightmare Phoenix, 1 IP Masquarena, 1 the Dark Charmer Gloomy, 1 Nightmare Unicorn, 1 Appaloosia Bow of the Goddess, and then finally 1 Axis Code Talker. Oh yeah, the extra deck, I'll just chime in about that real quick. It looks random, but we can actually use all this stuff. The Synchros can be used with Uni-Zombie. Again, we should have a Fairy Tail Snow in here, especially given that I have Shooting Riser in the extra deck here. But yeah, Uni-Zombie gives us access in various forms to these synchros here. Obviously, we're playing level 1, so we can go for Nightingale, so we do have an option to go into Zeus if we need to. Linkruiboh, very important extra deck monster for this deck, and I actually crafted this specifically for this deck, even though I did also end up using it in Labyrinth as well. But yeah, Linkruiboh, very important in case you open Wightbaking or Wightprince. You can just normal summon that and then go for Linkruiboh on turn 1. Or if your opponent makes you go first, or if you don't have a target for Relinquished Anima, also a fairly important card, I think, for this extra deck to have. And then, yeah, other than that, we've just got some generic Link stuff to go into if we need to. So, extra deck, again, looks a little random, but it's actually all very relevant. So, as far as Fairy Tale Snow, I don't know, I'd probably just cut like a Lightning Storm or a Droll and Lockbird, or maybe an Imperm. Nah, I'd cut either Droll and Lockbird or Lightning Storm to fit that in the deck here, but, yeah, I think that's going to be it for the build there, so let's just go straight into some gameplay. Alright, so our first game here is actually going to be against one of the new decks on the block, Runic. So we'll see how this new deck fares against some spooky, scary skeletons. So we're going to be taking the second turn, as always, as this is a second turn deck, as I mentioned before. We've got the Lava Golem in case our opponent drops too scary of a board, but playing against Runics, they're never going to have two monsters for us to be able to Lava Golem. Even then, their monsters really aren't typically worth Kaijuing anyway, so I'm going to fire off the Ash Blossom against the Terraforming. Usually blind going first if my opponent just drops Terraforming before anything else. That's what I'll do. I'll just go ahead and fire off an Ash Blossom against it, because normally field spells, for whatever deck is playing them, tend to be pretty important. They did have a Runic Fountain in their deck anyway, but they only did it for one card, which is totally fine, and as you can see, they didn't mill me at all, and they didn't really gain any advantage, so I don't really care about what this Runic player is currently doing. I managed to peel a 1-for-1 off the top of my deck, which is pretty rad. I can pitch this Wightbaking here. Oh, they've got this Runic Slumber. That's fine, I don't care. Oh yeah, what do they mill? That's a funny thing too, I'm playing a 60-card deck. Like, it's actually kind of a bit of a meta call, I guess, because Runics are so popular. Like, I'll play a 60-card deck and then you're harder to mill. Lol the meme, but of course, like, you know, I'm going to be milling myself plenty with Wightprinces and ideally Grass as well, so, you know, it's not really like I have that much of an advantage against other mill decks there. But I guess I have an advantage in that, like, it's much less likely for them to hit something important off of the Runic mills there, and they actually did hit a King of the Skull Servants, but because I had this Wightmare in hand, it actually played out in my favor, and specifically because they milled a King of the Skull Servants, I can get 3 of them out on the board on my first turn of this duel here, so I figured this would be a great way to start off, like, just, you know, casually 3 5,000 attack King of the Skull Servants, and now you might be seeing why this is a going second deck, is because, like, again, that's our main win con, is just a bunch of monsters here. Now, you might be thinking, like, whoa, you're linking away all of your big attack monsters. And I am, actually, to go for Knightmare Phoenix, specifically. Even though I did have a whole bunch of 5,000 attack monsters, I think getting rid of this Runic Fountain is honestly more important than them having, or than me having a whole bunch of big monsters in play. Because that Runic Fountain is going to be their only source of refueling. So if I can get rid of that, then they're not going to be able to have any other plays left. And, like, yeah, they can go for a Hugin in front of their Fountain, but now they don't have any other Quick Play spells in hand because they didn't really bother generating any advantage on their turn 1. I noticed they were playing Threatening Roar, which you don't, in my opinion, need in Runics at all. So I think if they had devoted, like, maybe they just got bad draws, sure, but maybe they just also need to devote some more slots to, like, Runic Quick Play spells or something. But yeah, here I'll just summon this Lady in Wight and then go for the Nightmare Unicorn. Spin away this Hugin, and then I can just battle for game. My opponent realizes this and, you know, surrenders in cowardice before facing the king himself. So, pretty hype first game there. We managed to beat one of the new decks on the block. We got all 3 King of the Skull Servants out on turn 1. And then won pretty easily from there. Just goes to show the power of these bony boys. So let's go ahead and just move on to the next duel. Alright, this game here is going to be against Zodiac. So, it's been a while since I've played against Zodiac. I'm actually surprised to see it in the Duelist Cup of all places. I figured everyone in the Duelist Cup would be jamming like one of the new decks or Branded Despia, and like almost nothing else. Maybe some Eldritches here or there, but I got to admit, I've seen more of a variety than I expected to. So, I mean, Master Duel is going to be a bit more varied than other like TCG or OCG formats anyway, because the card pool is generally more accessible. People are able to experiment more easily. It's not like, when a meta is only determined by like events, then you tend to see more like meta decks in general, because obviously people want to bring their best deck to an event. But when you're looking at a meta that's based off something like Ranked Ladder that's like continuously going, people are eventually going to get bored of whatever deck they're playing and want to play another one at some point. I mean, even if I didn't have the YouTube channel, I would definitely be playing just a whole host of different decks anyway. It's just how I like to play digital card games. So anyway, opponent's going to flip up an anti-spell fragrance after going for Trident. It's not that big of a deal though. We're actually still able to pretty easily make plays even beyond like the spell cards in our hand. Going Wightbaking for Relinquished Anima. The Relinquished Anima is just there to force the Trident. Like, I knew the Trident was going to destroy the Anima, but I wanted to make sure that the Trident was destroying something before I made like my, like quote-unquote main plays, like with this King of the Skull Servants here. Alright, so here I'm going to use the Wightprince that's in my graveyard to set up the King of the Skull Servant. So, yeah, I was still playing Wightprincess at this point. You can see it's in my hand right now. But my opponent had an Imperm for the King. That is one thing that's kind of annoying, is that Effect Negation can keep your King of the Skull Servants from having its attack boost. So, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the Knightmare Phoenix to destroy this anti-spell fragrance. That way I can play Allure and maybe go for another out here. My opponent actually drops a Nibiru on me, but that's fine because I've got Maxx in hand. So, and I don't really anticipate many other points. Well, I guess Maxx is pretty good against Zodiac's period, but my opponent doesn't have any other cards in hand, so the Maxx wasn't going to likely be that useful anyway. Now here, I want to talk about this left arm offering. As you can see, I pitched Call By, Droll, Knockboard, Harpie's Feather Duster. I should have actually activated Call By, probably on, I don't know, probably Thoroughblade, just to have activated it, because you only have to discard 2 cards for left arm offering there. But I've only got 10 more cards in my deck than my opponent at this point, so this left arm offering was like, I thought about this for quite a bit actually. I was like really going back and forth of like, is this worth it? Is it not? To left arm for grass here, I'm only milling 10 instead of the 20 I usually do. I ultimately decided that like the 3 cards in my hand, again, Call By, Droll, Knockboard, Feather Duster, were not very useful in this scenario. Enough that like I decided to just go ahead and go for the grass here. So I left arm, throw down the grass, and I mill a whole bunch of not Skull Servants. So like exclusively I milled exclusively stuff that's bad to mill. So a bit of a womp womp, was definitely not worth it. I would have much rather had those 3 cards in hand than those 10 cards milled. But it's not that big of a deal. My opponent's in top deck mode as well as me. So and I also have a lot of good top decks here, like a lot. Wightmare here actually being one of them, because I do have a banished King of the Skull Servant, so I get to special summon that by pitching the Wightmare. Now that the King is in play, we can just go ahead and slam that Nibiru for 6,000 attack points. Opponent's going to set a monster. It's not going to matter because there's nothing that can really defend against King of the Skull Servants here. And it's only going to get bigger as I top deck this Wightprince and able to link it off for Linkruiboh. And then use the effect to send a bunch of cards. Or I would if my opponent didn't Ash Blossom here. That's fine though. I'm still going to use the Wightprince's effect to summon another king from my deck. Because even though I'm banishing 3 cards, the 2 kings will still be at 4,000 attack points. It's going to be just shy of actually killing my opponent this turn. I figured that face down card, I thought it was going to be an Ash Blossom, but actually it'd be a Ghost Ogre. Either way, I figured Linkruiboh wouldn't be able to run over it. So I'm just short, 1 Skull Servant engraved short of being able to actually finish the opponent here. But their top deck wasn't good enough, and like my last opponent, they were too cowardly to face judgments from the king and just decided to concede instead. So there's that one. Let's go ahead and move on to the next game. Now we have a duel here against Labyrinth, the other major new deck other than Runix. I wanted to show off games against, if nothing else, those two decks. So, as always, ever giving our opponent the first turn here, the mercy of the first turn. We want to make sure they have some kind of a chance against Skull Servants, right? So yeah, they're going to start with Ariana. I'm definitely going to just imperm it, because I don't want them to be able to search a Welcome Labyrinth. That is the card that I am fearing the most here. I'm actually glad that I end up building these themes and doing deck profiles on them, because now I know these archetypes well enough to actually like know what's up here and what's going on. So our opponent's using the Labyrinth Archtrain, which I was not using in my build, because it can only grab normal traps that can only be activated when an attack is declared. So I'm not really into those battle-based trap cards myself, so I just decided not to include it. Now I've got the Lightning Storm. My opponent's going to respond by compulsing the Labyrinth Archfiend back to their hand. That's going to allow them to use the Ariana and the Archfiend's effect once again. Compulsory, a very good card in Labyrinths in general. I talked about that in the deck profile as well, but yeah, now my opponent's able to set up another... I thought they were able to set up another trap card, I guess not, but we're able to set up a Grass, so that's nice. We milled a Wightprince and a Mezuki, so we can Mezuki for the king himself, at 8,000 attack points, and then going to normal summon the Wightprince and go for Relinquished Anima in order to eat this Labyrinth Archfiend. And I actually thought I had lethal here, but I ultimately didn't. I thought, for some reason, I thought 9,000 or 1,600 was going to do 8,000 damage, but it actually doesn't. But I could have had lethal here. Actually, if I had banished Wightprince for another king and then used Wightmare, I could have had 2 King of the Skull Servants, and I think that should have been enough for lethal. If I had put a monster back, let's see, 3, 6, they would both would have been at 8,000. Yeah, I could have had 2 King of the Skull Servants at 8,000 attack here, so I could have actually OTK'd my opponent, but, meh, you know, whatever, it happens. Now, I could just declare an attack for lethal here, but I actually do want to clear these back rows first. This isn't just like a me being like superfluous, that word. I can never say it right, but anyway. No, I do actually want to make sure I get rid of these back rows, because my opponent did demonstrate that they are running mirror forces, so like I don't want to be attacking in the back rows right now. But yeah, I'll get the Lady In Wight just to have the protection just in case, and now we can attack with game for an 8,000 attack Skull Servant. So, like I said, the one con here is just to grace them with the glory of the king. We've got 2 more games as well, so let's jump into the next one right away. Okay, so this duel is going to be against Predaplants, which got a lot of new support actually in the latest set. This is the first time I've played against Predaplants in this event. Since they got the new support, and it's not often at all. This might even be the first time I've ever played against a Predaplant deck, like, in general. I'm not too well... I know it's a fusion archetype, and I know, like, they have, like, Predator counters, but that's about all I really know about them, so... Alright, I managed to open a Vat-Grasslick screener, so I'm going to fire it off right away, but my opponent's got an Ash Blossom. Womp womp, so no mills for us. We're going to have to look for another way here, but we're not going to have to look too hard, because I've got a Wightbaking and a Wightprince in hand, so I can just start by summoning the Wightbaking, going for the Linkruiboh. Like I said, this is a very important monster to have for this extra deck, so this is like, you know, if you don't count Uni-Zombie, I don't really, because it comes with a structure deck, but this is kind of like the one ultra you do have to craft for this deck if you already have grasses. If you don't, obviously you have to craft those as well, but... And I mean, I guess you don't have to play grass. You could play a 40-card Skull Servant deck, but like, it's not even just a matter of the meme, honestly. Like, I really do think that grass is like just, you know, the best choice for this deck, because you want as many Skull Servants in grave as quickly as possible, and that Grasslick screener is definitely the way to do that as quickly as possible. So here my opponent is doing some Predaplant stuff, I don't know, trying to fuse, but I'm going to veil their monsters so they can't. Yeah, normally I would have reduced I would have attributed my Linkruiboh, so that way my opponent wouldn't be able to run their monster into my Linkruiboh, but you actually, their monster that they used to search with actually had 0 attack points, and you can't Linkruiboh something that's already got 0 attack, because, well, you can't change a monster's attack value to something that's already at, so... oh yeah, that Droll Knockbird definitely should have gotten fired off a lot earlier, by the way. I just misclicked not playing it the first time, but My opponent ends after I play it the second time there, so with a couple of Wightmares in my hand, I'm definitely down to use the effect of the Wightprince from my graveyard. I'll get back this Lady In Wight here. That's actually also going to be important because then it's going to keep my Skull Servant safe from the back row. Although I decided to ultimately just use the Knightmare Phoenix to get rid of the back row here. It's going to be a cross-out designator, so like nothing too important. I got another king in my hand, so I'll just go ahead and summon him and battle with all my monsters here, leaving my opponent just shy of lethal. Oh, don't mind this. This was a total like brain fart, by the way. In main phase 2, I was like, oh, I can go for Zeus here, and then I was like, oh wait, you have to battle with an Xyz monster, not just battle and then Xyz in the main phase 2. Duh. So, don't mind this casual defense mode Lyrilusc here. That was a, I mean, it was a totally intentional play that ultimately ended up winning me the duel, thus ensuring that, no, it was not the correct play there. But we did win all the same. So, did it really matter? Yes, it was still not the right play. It did matter. But whatever, we won. Who cares? One more duel. Let's go right into it. And finally, this last game is going to be against Divas. By Divas, I mean like Deep Sea Diva, which is apparently this is a whole like archetype now. Like when I quit Yu-Gi-Oh in 2016, this isn't me being Yu-Gi-Oh. I'm not complaining about this. This is more me. I didn't know this was an archetype. Like when I quit Yu-Gi-Oh, it was only Deep Sea Diva, but I guess they just released a whole bunch of support for it. So, yeah, they're going to use the field spell to stack the Diva on top of the deck and then just pass. So that's fine with me. Or would be more fine with me if I had like a better opening hand. But I don't really have a good hand, so I just have to summon Mezuki, attack directly, and pass. So like, yeah, we're straight up in some like 2007, like 2000. Well, Mezuki would have been like 2009 Yu-Gi-Oh here, but Mezuki and Deep Sea Diva, yeah, that was like 2009. Maybe even 2010, you could argue. Actually, it would be more like 2010, I think. That would have been more like Edison format. Good old Edison format. Don't mind me. I'm just going on a Yugi Boomer rant here. So, I'm going to use the Droll and Mockbird to stop their Dragoons and just keep them from getting more searches in general. So, it's going to severely limit what they're able to do here. Now the field spell actually managed to grab the Nibiru here. I remember reading that field spell and I was thinking like, wow, as long as they don't hit Nibiru. But they did, actually. But now here's the thing. My opponent is going to give me my Nibiru back? Question mark? Which I'm just going to fire off right away here. They do have a Maxx, but remember, I activated Droll and Mockbird earlier, so they actually don't get any draws off that Maxx. Now, one thing I do want to note here, and this is something that I like to talk about quite a bit. Normally when you're playing, when you're not looking at replays of actually playing, there's this button here that says auto, and you can switch it from auto to on to off. That'll determine when you get prompted to respond with an effect. I definitely wanted to set my toggle to on there when I dropped this Nibiru. If it was set to auto, then my opponent could have synchro summoned before I got a chance to drop the Nibiru. And they had the materials to go for level 10. I had to assume they were going for Baronne de Fleur here, which would have been able to negate Nibiru the Primal Being. So it was definitely very important. As soon as I saw they had the means to go for level 10 synchro, I immediately flipped my toggle to on because I knew they were putting my Nibiru back. And then, yeah, I wanted to be able to Nibiru before they dropped a Baron. That's kind of why I say, too, I don't really know why my opponent bothered making that play. Like, you know, a player who was mindful about that was always going to Nibiru you here. So I would have, I don't know. Yeah, you could take the chance and just, like, assume that maybe your opponent isn't mindful enough to do that, but I don't like to assume stuff like that. I'd rather just assume my opponent's going to play correctly and then play appropriately here. So, anyway, we managed to rip a grass off the top of our deck because we're just the luckiest player in the world, and we milled 2 Wightprinces and a Wightbaking because, again, we're just the luckiest player in the world. So, yeah, here I'm just going to use the Wightprinces in order to, or the Wightbaking in order to add a Wightmare and a King. And then I can discard one of my Kings and just bring it back with Mezuki, banish the Wightprince to bring out my 3rd King, and then I'll use my Wightmares in order to not only give my Kings protection, but also buff them as well. So, yet another game where we got all 3 of the Kings online. And there you have it. There are our games here in the Duelist Cup with Skull Servants of all decks. And as you can see, we did actually manage to get like 5 wins in with it. Not just 5, like I got more wins with this deck. These are just games I decided to keep. I had other pretty decent games with it too. I think my record overall was 9-6 from what I recall. So yeah, I mean, an overall above 50% win rate across 15 games in the Duelist Cup, I will take that. I will take that. If I can get that with Skull Servants, I will definitely take that. So that is going to do it for the gameplay. We're just going to go straight to the outro now. Alright, I want to thank everybody so very much for watching all the way to the very end of the video like this. I super duper appreciate that. I also appreciate those of you who are supporting the channel by commenting and or subscribing. Comments, let me know what you think of the build. I actually do want to know what you think of this build, because this is one of those decks that I think is actually pretty fun to work on. I don't think it's completely refined yet. I do think it is a going second deck, like I mentioned initially in the profile. Because the win condition is attacking with King of the Skull Servants, I think you have to go second. So I think we should build it with that in mind. And I do think it does pretty much have to be a grass deck. It could be a 40-card deck, but nah, I think it should be a grass deck. So the extra deck is mainly the thing that I'm like, there's so many different things you could play in the extra deck in theory. I think this is pretty close to, like, the Xyz and the Links I'm definitely sure are like what I want for the extra deck. Synchros I'm a little bit less sure on. And Uni-Zombie, again, I never end up seeing it the whole time, so I never got to evaluate exactly how good this card is in this deck. I would love the opportunity to be able to do that as well. So, like I said, let me know what you think in the comments below. And also, like I mentioned, I do have the Patreon as well, if you want some more daily Master Duel content and feel like contributing over there. So, that's also very greatly appreciated for those of you who do that. I super duper do appreciate that. But yeah, that's going to be all the time that I got for today. So without further ado, this is HexLex. I'm signing out, and I hope you have a fantastic day.